Greetings and welcome to a special video for my alpha testers of BattleMercs. Today I want to show you how you can edit and create your own maps in BattleMercs, and it's actually really easy, and all you really need is this free program called Tiled. Tiled is an open source. Download it for free. You know, if you really do use it, I definitely recommend donating. You can purchase it for an amount. But especially if you just want to try it out, it's totally free. And look, there's all these real games that use it. It is a very powerful map editor, and all the maps in BattleMercs are built using Tiled. So you can look at existing maps or make new ones if you download this. Okay, so where do you find the maps? You guys won't have all these files. These are all my development files, as you can see, the source code and so on. But in your folder where you've downloaded BattleMercs, you will have a resources folder. And in there will be all sorts of subfolders. And just to help you navigate, there's a couple of folders that you may want to be aware of. The first is this maps folder. And this folder contains all the general maps that are intended to be used across any campaign or any career that the game holds. So these are sort of like common maps. So for instance, arena maps. So I don't know, let's look at Snow City. So if you have Tiled installed and you double click on a map, I'm getting errors because I had previous maps open. Okay. Let's skip past all these. The joys of alpha testing. I recently was moving a bunch of files around. That's why we're getting all those errors, because I couldn't find certain files. But I'm just going to close all these other files that I had open. And let me try this again. Let's say we open Snow City. This is what you will actually experience. Voila, it opens up. So first of all, what we've got here, you can hold Control and scroll the mouse wheel to zoom in and out. But here is the map. Here are the palettes that you have to use. So there's Crescent Hawk's terrain, Crescent Hawk's buildings. So first of all, to orient you, maps are based on a number of layers. So every layer right now is visible. You can see there's a ground layer, terrain layer, buildings, triggers, etc. If you click on the eyeball, everything on that layer will disappear. So right now, this is the ground layer. And you can see it's just a bunch of snow. We'll make a map together, but let's just sort of step through this map before we go on to how you actually make a map. If you want to know what's on the terrain layer, you can turn it on. And we could hide the ground layer if we want to see, okay, these are all the unique tiles for the terrain layer. We could also look at the buildings 1 layer. Notice that I wasn't super consistent, and for instance, this building is on both the terrain, it's on the terrain level. It really should be on the buildings 1 level, or maybe the buildings 2 level. But it truthfully doesn't really make a big difference, as long as it's not on the ground level. Okay, so let's see, how do I want to explain this? I think making a map, some things will become clearer, so I'm going to hold off on some ideas here. But anyway, so basically the way you would make a map is just create a series of layers and just draw things on the map. And actually, it may look rather tedious to draw out, you know, the edges of things, but I'm going to show you Tiled. The reason we're using Tiled is because it automatically does some of this stuff for us. It's actually a really powerful editor. There's 2 other special layers that you need on BattleMercs, and one is the triggers layer. And as you can see, if I turn it on and off, this shows where all the enemies and the player spawns are. So the arena and the contract maps are designed to have multiple player spawns and multiple enemy spawns, and the game will randomly select which spawn to place players and enemies. That's how come you sometimes spawn in different random spots. If you wanted a player to always spawn in one spot, you just have one player spawn and that'd be it, and the player would always spawn there. The other special layer we have on BattleMercs is a layer called Block, and this is where we block out all the impassable tiles. So in an arena, what I've been doing is surrounding arenas in a big wall and just blocking off everything outside the wall. If we load up a different map, so if we go back over here and rather than arena, you know, we look at contract maps, so there's deathmatch maps. Well, just since we're here, there are planet maps, and these are the maps that people travel to in the inner sphere. These are like when you're walking around as a little dude. We're not going to look at these today, but you know, if you really want to take a look at one, you can just go open it up, and you'll see it's very similar to what we've been setting up over here. But we're not going to I'm not going to explain how this works today because it's a little more complicated. The battle maps are a lot easier to make. And then the temp folder here was just a temporary folder where I was holding some test maps, so you can play with that if you want. But let's open up a contract map. So let's say Deathmatch Beach. Let's go with. You can see that there are some blocked off tiles. And this isn't an elegant solution, but it's sort of the fastest solution I had for the game. So if you do make new maps, just be aware you have to add some rows of block tiles at the bottom and the side. Basically, if you can picture when you're actually in combat, along the bottom, when you have a unit selected, you can see their stats and, you know, there's the engage or hold button and all their weapons. If you don't have some block tiles here at the bottom, then what can happen is units can actually walk down underneath your unit selection bar, and there's no way to like see them while you got anything selected. So again, I might find a more elegant, better solution for this down the road, but this is just sort of a hack. A very quick, easy solution temporarily. And along the left side, you have your list of your 12 units, you know, little icons, and you can click on those icons to select your units. So you have to have a couple of dead tiles on the left, otherwise units can walk behind that, and then you can't find them on the map. So if enemy units were hanging around back here, you wouldn't be able to find them anywhere on the map, but they're just hiding behind your UI. So anyway. Okay, so, you know, this looks a lot like an arena map. But enough messing around. Let's actually create a new map here. So I'm just going to start a totally new map. And here are the parameters you want to have initially. The size can be anything you want. So for instance, this Deathmatch Beach, this has a width of 72 and a height of 72 tiles. The tile width and tile height are how big graphically the tiles are. So make sure you leave this at 16 and 16. But the actual size of the map can be anything you want. So let's make a big map. Let's go 128 by 128. I like to have powers of 2 or some kind of function of 2 for my sizes. I don't like doing things like 129, but anyway, I don't know why I'm telling you guys that. The rest you'd leave as is. And now you go to save as, and let's make a new deathmatch map. Why not? This one will show up in the next alpha build, alpha 7 that I put out, I suppose. So what don't we have a lot of? Let's make, I don't know, let's make a forest base map. How about that? That sounds like that could be kind of fun. All right, so we start out with a totally blank interface. Where do we go from here? First things first, go ahead and rename this. If you select a layer, you can go over here into name, and we'll just call this ground. This will be our ground level. Now, over here in the Crescent Hawks tiles, we can figure out what we want to be the ground. So if this is a forest map, typically you'd want either grass or dirt. So we're going to go with something like this. Actually, these tiles here all actually are elevated tiles. Even these ones don't look elevated. The way you can tell is if you select a tile, you'll see properties of it. So if you want to draw a hill, this would actually go on top of the hill. If you select a forest, for instance, you see that it's flammable, it reduces unit speed, it reduces the chance of units that are standing in that tile to be hit, it reduces vision. So you can actually go and click on any of these tiles, you know, like mountain tiles are blocked off, so you can click around and see what the properties are. But if I had selected this for the ground, then the entire, like any of these 3 tiles, the entire map would have started elevated, even though it wouldn't really look like that. So instead, I'm going to come over here. Here are some basic ground tiles. I'm just going to grab these. So here's one thing you could do. You could take a tile, and you could zoom in here, and you could start drawing it out. You know, then you say, okay, I want some variety, so I want this tile in here mixed in, and this. And you think, phew, it's going to take forever to fill this stupid map. I wish there was a better way. So don't do that. Instead, select the tile you want, and there's a paint tool. And this will fill the entire map in with that tile. But now you're looking at it and you're saying, oh man, it's the same tile over and over. That doesn't look too nice. Aha, tiled has you covered. Click and drag and select a couple tiles. And now, let's see, hold on. We want these and we want paint. Why is that not working? Huh, that was really weird. So click and drag. It doesn't want me to do it. But if I hold click and if I click and then I hold shift and I click again, now I can do it. Very odd. Okay, so pro tip when you're selecting multiple tiles, I thought I was doing this before by just clicking and dragging, but click once, hold shift, and click again. You'll select the whole row. Now when you go to paste, oh, now it doesn't want to paste. What is happening? I'm speaking so highly of tiled and it's glitching out on me. I'm doing something wrong. I know I am. Okay, there we go. You'll see that it's pasting these 3 tiles in order all over the map. So we're still not ready to paste yet. The last thing you want to do is click randomize. And now, if we scroll in, we can see that it's randomly selecting between these 3 tiles. And if I just click, now voila, I've just covered the entire map in grass. All right, we have ground. Next step, we're going to create a new layer here. And let's call this, I'll call it terrain. You can have as many layers as you want, call them whatever you want. The only ones that are special are block and trigger. Okay, so let's say that we want to have something like a path, right? Paths are common, and we can find it. Right, so if you wanted, oh, and notice I'm still on paint and random. So when I go to move on to the terrain layer, it wants to paint this tile across the whole map. So I'm going to switch back to stamp. And now I could just draw out an individual path. And again, you could try to add some variety so that the path looks kind of interesting. You'll make mistakes sometimes. Whatever layer you're on, the erase tool will erase only that layer. So I can erase the path layer, the terrain, without affecting the ground. But this is too tedious. We're not going to do it this way. There is a better way. So far I've been playing around with the tile sets, but if you go to terrain sets, here are some predefined things that I have specified from the tile set. So for instance, if you select paths, there is a dirt path option, and this will draw paths, and it will figure out which tiles need to be placed based on what you have drawn. You could also draw a snowy road. Again, not appropriate for this tile set, but maybe if you're doing a snow terrain. And remember before how I said it might seem tedious to have to draw out things like water or mountains and stuff because you have to figure out all the edge pieces. Well, that's not entirely true. Select water, and there you go. Select sand, and there you go. Select hills. There you go. See, it's filling in the hills automatically, and these tiles that look like grass are actually elevated. We can add dirt. You know, we can add a valley if we want. We can add, let's see, snow. You want snowy patches. Oh yeah, that's just a test one. It's playing around with some Dune 2 sprites. Here's ice. Now notice that ice is supposed to go on top of snow, right? Because it's ice, but the edge is snow, so it doesn't look right on grass. So you say, okay, I want the ice to go on top of the snow. Well, if you did that, it kind of screws up your snow. So how can you put ice on top of the snow without erasing the snow? Create a new layer. Call this terrain 2. And now anything I draw here is not going to undo what's on terrain 1. So now I could draw ice if I want. And now I could add terrain 3, and I could even add some water on top of that. So you can create these nice layered maps by just having multiple different terrain layers. Okay, so I've got terrain selected, Control A to select all, delete, there goes all my terrain. Okay, let's actually make a tile, let's actually make a map here. So this is, I call it mountain or forest base. So let's see, we want some dirt. Here's one other tip when you are drawing. If you hold control, you'll draw a bigger swatch. So here's without control and here's with control. So if you're trying to fill an area, holding control and drawing can be quite handy. And now I feel like Bob Ross. I'm just sort of freehand. I don't exactly know 100% how this is going to turn out or what I want yet, but I'm just going to sort of explore around here. I guess what I will do is have some dirt patches, and maybe in those patches will be a few bases, something like that. And in between, I'll put forests and mountains, and I'll add some paths to connect them. So something like that. Maybe we'll have like a big mountainous region here where people can sort of lure enemies and launch ambushes and stuff. So we'll just sort of fill this in. Now, I like to just sort of draw things in like this when I'm doing terrain, because I feel like it gives it sort of an unfinished, messy look. And, you know, I don't want it to look too clean when I'm doing terrain. When I'm doing buildings and stuff and in concrete, I try and make it look, more, I don't know, mechanical, artificial. We'll have some mountainous regions here. Oh, and I do have to remember, before I forget, to add in my block. So remember, I have to block off a region at the bottom and the side. Let's do that real quick. I'm going to show you how I do this. So we create a new tile layer. We call it block. I think I'm calling it block anyway. Yeah, block. And I keep it at the very top. So you can reorder the layers by pressing the up or down arrow when you have a layer selected. Keep block at the top. I usually turn its opacity down so that it's semi see-through. So if I go here into a particular tile set, so I'm in Crescent Hawk's buildings, just grab any old red tile you want and you can draw. And notice that it's kind of see-through, right? It's because I turned the opacity down. If it was all the way up, you couldn't see through it. So I like to turn the block opacity down so I can just see through it a little bit. But let me just see how big I made this over here. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tiles tall and 2 wide. So let's add this in now so we don't accidentally put cool terrain in the blocked off area. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, I now want to draw across the map. And I could draw this by hand, but here's a tip. If you hold shift when you click, then I just clicked, I'm not pressing anything right now. Notice I'm drawing a line. So you can do this for drawing roads and stuff too. But as soon as I'm still holding shift, you click again, then it places it. And now I can hold shift and click, and click. And I'm holding shift and I click, and I click. And I'm holding shift and I click, and I click. And I'm holding shift and I click, and I click. Okay, now you got to fill in that blocked area. Go to your old friend, the paint can, boom, boom, you're done. We don't want to fill in this area, or the map won't be playable because people won't be able to walk around. But now we've added the blocked area. It looks great. Good. Now we know don't put any cool terrain down there because nobody can actually walk around down there. So if we go back to our tile sets, we can go to dirt. And remember, don't start drawing on the block terrain by mistake. Go back to your proper terrain tile. The biggest mistake I was making when I was making maps is accidentally drawing things on the wrong tile. It happens all the time. As you see in some of the maps that are playable, right? Some of these buildings are actually on the terrain tile. Doesn't really screw anything up, but it's good to be at least semi-organized when you're trying to do this. And if you're ever unsure what layer something is on, like what layer is the mountains on, just start making things invisible until you see it. And then you say, oh, okay, it's on terrain too. But anyway, we'll keep doing this. And I don't know, we'll have one more big region up here. I don't know how good this map is going to be, but it'll be a map, so there's that. Okay, next thing is let's throw some forests down. So coming into your tileset area, go into Crescent Hawk's terrain. I'm just going to select all 6 forests. I mean, I could do this more precisely. You could come in here and, you know, first place down the heavier forest, and then give like a little outline of lighter forest around the heavier, so it goes light into heavy. You could do that. I'm going to be a little lazy today and just select it all and let randomness take care of it. And I'm just going to draw out some forest. And so it's mixing some heavy and light forest here. Again, I like to do this in such a way that it looks semi-organic and natural and sort of give like, you know, little splotches of it out here. I'm not a very good map maker. I'm fully admitting that. So if you're watching this, like shaking your head like, oh God, Jay, how did you get this far in life? I agree with you. But nonetheless, we're going to work with what we got. You know what I'm thinking? It'd be cool to have a path through this forest. That'd be kind of neat. Sort of like a little forested path. Maybe people could do ambushes or something through the forest. I don't think any of my maps have a path through the forest yet, so I'm totally going to do that. Maybe we should also add some water or something in here. Okay, so there's a little bit of forest added in. Let's go over here to my path, and we'll add a dirt path. And we'll go through the forest like this, up and around. It's very easy to draw out what you want. I'm even going to have a path that goes down into the mountains over here. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Let's do one thing, by the way, that I like to do in my tiles or my maps is not include everything I possibly could. So for instance, I don't think this map feels like it needs any elevation. I find maps have more character if they have limited tile sets, so there's only so much going on. So I take it back. I don't think I'm going to put water on this map. Adding water, I mean, it's fine to do it if you want to make a map that way, but I feel like I like the idea of it being a rather limited tile set. So forests, mountains, which we never finished, so let's finish that, and bases. So let's see, terrain, mountains, and we want this on terrain too. So we'll do some mountain here. I think it is fun to have sort of like mountainous regions that your guys can like escape to, and you can try and launch ambushes and you can hide in and stuff. As a few people pointed out in the on the Discord, the AI isn't, the pathfinding AI gets a little bunched up in like really tight quarters. So if you are making mountainous regions and stuff, like right here, that's fairly tight. It's conceivable if your units are here and you try and tell them to go over here, some will go around. And it's just how the pathfinding works. One day I might be able to improve that, but pathfinding is actually a very expensive computation. And so this game is written in Pygame. And Python is actually notoriously slow. It's not a really fast language. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't have made this in Pygame. But in order to get the pathfinding to work at all, I had to find a library where it was written in C and compiled for Python. And if you know anything about Python programming, you know what I'm talking about. If not, don't worry about it. But suffice to say that the pathfinding, even though the game is written in Python, the pathfinding actually is not. And that's because it was way too complex to be written in Python, if you can believe it. So, there's that. So yeah, the pathfinding, it is what it is. It works, so we can be happy it works, and maybe one day it will get better. But for now, just be aware. Your units are finicky. They sort of have old school DOS AI when it comes to movement. Okay, so we have sort of a hidden area down here. I will say, by the way, when you are making maps, one thing that does suck about giant maps is it can be hard to find your enemies. So it may seem fun to make, I'm going to make the most massive map ever, but it may actually suck gameplay-wise. So just think about that when you are making maps. I mean, honestly, this is probably on the big side as far as maps go. It might not be the greatest map, but as I say, I'll include it in the next update so you guys can actually see the finished product. Okay, let's add a base. So the other terrains that we haven't really looked at is Crescent Hawk's buildings. Notice, by the way, there's fire tiles. You can place these if you want. Like if you want pre-existing fires to exist on the map. And when the game starts, there will be fires there. But this map, it wouldn't make a lot of sense for a forest map like this to have fires. So there's all sorts of buildings and stuff that you can place in here. You can place them like individual tiles, just like we were doing with Force. So here's some like leftover tiles that I was working on. So this is just sort of like a debug area. But you just ignore those. So for instance, like let's say that we want to have a big concrete area for a base. We'd come in here and let's create a new layer here. We'll call this base ground. And I'm going to use the shift click technique to draw out a square, because bases are usually square things, or at least rectangular in nature. And maybe I'll make this a little taller even. Boom. I'm going to fill that in, and there's our base. And now I'm going to add a new tile layer. I'll call this base building. So you can make as many tile layers as you want, and it's basically just putting like one layer on top of the other. Oops, we definitely don't want paint for that. And we want stamp. And so here's an interesting thing. I've selected a bunch of tiles, and I actually do want to place them in order. So the randomness I actually want to turn off, and now I can place them as a coherent thing. So these are like power generators from the old Crescent Hawks games. Let's say that I want to build a wall. So there's a, oh God, I misspelled buildings. I misspelled buildings. Look away, guys, look away. Okay, walls here. You can have a gray wall. You place them just like paths. There's a red wall. There are roads if you want to place roads, and there's different colored roads like icy roads and stuff. Let's go with a gray wall for this building here. And again, if you click and hold shift, you can actually, you can actually place these in lines. So holding shift is really important when you're building walls up for a base. I like to have bases be accessible from all directions too, so that, like, just think about when people are playing, if somebody's up here and you can't get in the base up here, it's a pain to have to go around. It may not make much sense tactically, you know, for the base, but my philosophy is if it's good for gameplay, do that and don't worry so much about the tactics. Okay, I think I want to move these guys up. So one thing you can do, there's a select tool. You can highlight things and Control X to copy or cut and Control V to paste. Actually, change my mind. I'm going to move them down here. So you can copy and paste things, move them. You can copy and paste or cut and paste, move things around. And the tile sets here, notice there are all these interesting sort of buildings that you can use. But, you know, to like paste these all in manually and build interesting buildings, that's too much work. Go into the buildings area, and you can simply draw out a building, and it will get filled in for you as you might want it. So something like that. So there's lots of buildings to play with. If you want to make multi-story buildings, because they kind of look cool. So like, let's say that we want to build a big complex right here. You would actually want to create another layer, and we'll call it Buildings 2. And now when I'm drawing on Buildings 2, it doesn't erase Buildings 1. So you can draw like this, and we could even create Buildings 3. Create a third layer. Boom. Now it just looks like a giant pyramid. So actually, I'm going to get rid of that because I don't actually want that in my base, but that's how you would do it. That's the exact same logic, by the way, you would use if you actually did want to make hills and valleys. So like, let's say you wanted to make a hill. So you go ahead here and you make the first hill on the terrain layer. If you want to make that hill even taller, then you go on to another layer and you place another hill on top. And then if you want to make an even taller hill, you go into another layer and place another hill. And this will create multiple levels of elevation. The game will do all the calculations to figure out the elevation levels. Okay, I'm just going to fill out this base a little bit more. Although, truthfully, I feel like I've shown you guys all the building blocks for, you know, what you would need in order to build maps. I can move. Yeah. One other thing I guess I'll show you that I do on these maps is I like to come over here to like the junk pile, the sort of like random mechs and ammo and cargo and boxes and stuff, and select all this stuff and just come in here to random and just sort of like fill some bases in with some random, you know, parts. Because I feel like, you know, in the inner sphere, people are, you know, it's always sort of like makeshift and they're just sort of having to do mech repairs in the field and all sorts of stuff. So I think it gives these bases a bit more character, just have some random bits lying around. But if you want to make more established, orderly bases, you certainly can do so. By the way, this building here has special door sprites. So if you select these tiles here, turn random off, you can go ahead and like actually give that building a door if you want. So there's a lot of sprites to play around with. You know, these buildings down here, you know, are just sort of various houses and stuff. You want to make like residential areas and things. Here are like the winter versions of them. I'm trying to think of anything else I can tell you. You can put up gates if you want. The gates are impassable, but people can see through them. On some maps, I've even sort of tried to create interesting like beacons and obelisks and stuff. So, you know, you could place a couple of these gates. Whoops, I selected too much there. A couple of these gates. Then you could select like an internal beacon and then some like side beacons. And I don't know, that looks kind of interesting to me. So you can build some like interesting shapes that you place around the map and stuff. I am not going to fill this all out live because this video has already gone on rather long, and I just wanted to show you guys the basics. If you have any questions, let me know. But at the end of the day, oh, by the way, let me say, so you save this, and I saved this in the Contracts Deathmatch folder. So BattleMercs, Resources, Maps, Contracts, Deathmatch. Any map you save in here, doesn't matter what it's called, we'll get into the rotation for any contract deathmatches. Any map that you save in the arena folder, we'll get into the rotation for arena maps. And if you go into the campaigns folder, you can see the Crescent Hawks Legacy campaign. There's a separate maps folder here. This is for the Crescent Hawks specific maps. So for instance, here's the Pacifica training field, so you can see that. Oh, and that actually reminds me, okay, I was about to go without fully explaining the triggers. Geez. Okay. The triggers layer. This is an object layer. It is different from all the other layers we've been placing. You call this one triggers. And what you need to do, if, for instance, you look over at these other maps, you need to have at least one object called player spawn and one object called enemy spawn. In arena maps, you would have player 1, 2, and 3 spawn and enemy 1, 2, and 3 spawn. It's how I set up the scripts initially. I should probably standardize it at some point. But if you're ever in doubt, just open up an existing map and look at the triggers they're using. But how do you make a trigger? Okay, so we need a couple player spawns. So let's come down here and let's say, okay, I want a player spawn to be in here. I'm on the triggers layer. If you just click and hold, if you come over here to insert rectangle, you click and hold and you draw out a little spawn area. It doesn't matter how big you make it. The game will always take the center of it. So just draw one out around there. Under name, call it player spawn. And that's literally it. If you go to the select tool, let's see here. There we go. You can select and move these things around. You can copy and paste them so you can make duplicates. Right, so right now the player could spawn here, here, or here. We need to also make an enemy spawn. So I'll come up over here, and I'll draw one over here, and I'll call this one enemy spawn. It's the name that has to be set up that way. If you try and introduce a map that doesn't have any triggers and no spawn points, it will not work. Now I like to distribute the player spawns at different points in the map so that every time the player spawns on this map, they might spawn in different areas. And then I like to do the same with the enemies so that it's never 100% predictable where you need to go. But if you guys want to do a different technique, you're free to do that. So yes, sorry, I almost forgot about triggers. Don't forget about triggers, they're important. I'll fill this map out and you'll see it in the next rotation, but you've seen the alpha version of the map, I guess we could say. If you do have any questions, let me know in the comments, or let me know in Discord. I'm so used to running a YouTube channel. Like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments down below. Just ask in Discord, and I will fill you in if there's something you don't get, you don't understand. But yeah, happy map making. I would love it if people made some extra maps for me. I find making maps really tedious, to be honest. It'd be so cool to have more maps for both contracts and arenas. So if people want to try them, send them to me. If they look good, I'll throw them right in. I might make a few minor changes if I think they need them, but truthfully, if you're enthused about making maps, I'm enthused to have you make maps, and I would love it to have you guys make some maps that end up in this game. So there you go. Check out Tiled. And thanks for watching.